Awesome. Thanks everyone for joining. We're ready to get started here. And I have a great team here going through some great content today. We hope you find it valuable. Before we get started, I'd like to let you all know to keep the questions coming in. We have our experts on hand to answer them, and we'll be answering some of them live as well as we go through. So any questions you have, please feel free to submit them. We have a little questions box. You can do that through. And let's get started, guys.
Excellent. So today's topic is growing your brand with sponsored products. My name is Sarah Hoffman. I am the customer success manager here. I'm going to be one of your speakers today.
And I'm Betsy Wadman, and I will be another one of your speakers today. And I'm also a customer success manager with Sarah.
Awesome. Yeah, you guys are getting the cream of the crop here from our already awesome team. My name is Gari. I'm the manager of product education here at Teikametrics. I was also on the customer success team, so I've probably spoken with a lot of you before, or you might have seen my head floating around the help center if you're a customer of ours.
So what we're going to be discussing today is, here's a quick agenda. So the first thing is, we want to understand the impact that sponsored products has on your brand's momentum. Then we want to dive into how to use sponsored products to increase your brand awareness. What's the best sponsored products data to enhance the experience that your customers are having with your brand? And then lastly, how to use sponsored products to know and ultimately defeat your competition.
Perfect. So we're going to start off right off the bat with a quick poll. I'm going to launch it right here. So we want to know, how long have you been selling on Amazon? So if you take a couple of minutes just to respond to that, it's going to kind of give us an idea for how familiar you might be with the marketplace, level of expertise, and we can make sure to anticipate that when we're talking about different concepts here. I know we have a tendency to use some terminology and abbreviation, so if you start going too much into that, please let us know, and we'll be happy to explain some of that out. Great. Looks like we have some responses coming in. I'm going to let that sit for a little bit longer here. And I think we have some experienced sellers on the line today, it looks like, and then some brand new ones as well.
Looks like the majority is between 2 and 5 years, so.
Perfect. So I'm going to close the poll here, share the results. Great. So it looks like we have about 33% of you are between 2 and 5, but we also have significant people who are brand new, just starting out, less than a year, or have been on Amazon for over 5 years. And then it looks like some of you are still probably in the consideration stage, still considering selling on Amazon. So it's great to get all the information up front so you know exactly what you're getting into moving forward. So that's perfect. It looks like we have a mix of experience levels here, guys. So let's keep that in mind as we're going through some of the questions today.
Excellent. So the first thing we want to talk about, again, is how can you use sponsored products to really build your brand's momentum? So if you've been on any of our past webinars, you've heard us talk a lot about the flywheel effect. And there's really 3 main pieces to this effect. We want to think about exposure, sales, and rank. And what the flywheel effect really is increasing each of these pieces to create this sort of momentum building experience, so that as exposure increases, sales increase, your rank increases, and all of these sort of feed into each other, creating what we call the flywheel effect. So
yeah, the flywheel effect is also a concept that I know Amazon uses internally as well. If any of you have had the chance to listen to the earnings call or seen the reporting later, this is also a concept that Amazon using internally to explain how one area of their business drives another.
Absolutely. And there's different ways that you can use sponsored products to build this effect. So if you want to think about that momentum, we can think about using sponsored products to increase exposure by owning your marketplace real estate on Amazon. You want to think about it in terms of increasing those sales and using sponsored products data to streamline your customer experience and ultimately lead to conversions. And then lastly, increasing your sales rank is going to help by knowing who your competition is and when to be the most competitive. And we're going to walk through each of these pieces in detail later on, but I'll give you a quick overview of each section. So first we have increasing your marketplace real estate. So what this means is you can use sponsored products to gain initial visibility for new products through these paid placement advertisements. And what you want to focus on is that brand awareness is the top of the funnel. And you want to own the marketplace real estate on Amazon, because when your customers are searching for your products, you want to use sponsored products to be the very first thing that they're seeing. You can also use sponsored products to collect a whole bunch of data that's going to help streamline and make your customer experience a better one. Sponsored products data, the search term data that you're getting, is pretty much the only place where you can know exactly what your customers are typing in when they're finding your products and when they're buying it. So this is really, really valuable. That data allows you to keep your brand message consistent. It's also going to help you, determine your top performers and make sure that you're capitalizing them to increase that conversion rate. So when we think about increasing conversion rate, we know that's going to help increase your rank. Another piece of that puzzle that sponsored products brings to the table is knowing your competition. So when you know your competition, higher sales rank again, better organic placement, but who are you competing against organically? You can use sponsored product data to know who you're competing against, how to beat them, and then you can double down on that sponsored products during your peak season to make sure that you're competing in your marketplace on your best performers.
Yeah, I think the key takeaway here is that data is really your currency, and you want to make sure you're spending it wisely. And the way that you get this data really is through sponsored products, because there's no search data available to you organically on Amazon.
Definitely. Okay, great. So, the first piece of the puzzle that Sarah just talked about was owning as much real estate as possible in the marketplace. And this definitely really varies across categories. So we really want to get a better sense of what categories you guys are selling in. So we do have another poll here that we're going to launch just to get a better idea of who we're talking to, discussing, specific category for an example.
Perfect. So the poll just launched. You guys will let us know what kind of products you're selling, what industries you're in. And while we wait for these responses to come in, Betsy, I know you speak with a lot of sellers on a daily basis. What categories do you see are the most competitive, where maybe your cost per click is going to be higher?
Yeah, a lot of sellers that I talk to that work in really competitive categories, electronic accessories, we've all shopped for iPhone cases on Amazon. There's so many choices there. So that's a really competitive category, as well as beauty and supplements. Again, it's really kind of expensive to compete there with a lot of different sellers in the category. So what are we looking at here?
So I'm going to close out this poll and share the results here. Thanks everyone for voting there. Great, so it's looking like our biggest category, is other, which makes sense. But of the named categories, it looks like home goods is where most of our sellers are today.
Awesome. Yeah, and I work with a couple sellers who sell in the home goods, furniture, different home accessories, and those are pretty competitive categories. I think the list that we put there were the most competitive categories that we've had experience with, but it's also pretty refreshing to know that you guys are starting to, that we have a really diverse audience that we're talking to, because that'll probably be really beneficial with some of the tips that we have for you guys today.
Yeah, and John makes a good point about, can we talk about how to achieve what we are talking about here? And hold tight, John, we're going to go into some actionable strategies. That's a really good point. Just going to set the stage here for you guys, and we're going to give you some tips you can take back in and out from your own business.
Yeah, definitely. So, like we mentioned, we want to kind of gain as much real estate as we possibly can on that Amazon search result page. So using advertising on Amazon, especially sponsored products, can really help you do this. And in some of those really competitive categories that you guys are working in, sometimes you have to pay to play. So to even show up, and especially if you're a small brand, if you're launching new products, you really want to put the investment in to make sure that your products and your brand name especially are showing up so that you can have more brand awareness. And that comes with owning more real estate on all of the search result pages. So owning more real estate on those result pages will ultimately lead to just more people seeing your brand name and seeing your products, and you being able to put your products in front of as many people as possible, and just increasing that funnel, which is what we're opening here. You're only going to increase the probability of a conversion. And then using sponsored products tools and using this data that we keep talking about from the search term report really helps you focus on who are the right consumers that you should be targeting that are actually really interested in what your products are. So some important metrics to watch during this phase of the game when you're trying to build more brand awareness are impressions and clicks, and not so much focusing on your bottom line profitability and your number of orders, because that'll all come later. So we have an example here of one of the largest brands that I know, Patagonia. Here, if we just searched the Patagonia brand name, we are actually seeing not only organic results, but their sponsored products ads show up. And this is really important here because this is building, Patagonia already has some really solid brand awareness, but they're building a trust that the consumers now have with their brand name. So this is really important and a really good opportunity for you to just remain top of mind to all of your consumers who are searching for you specifically with your brand name.
Yeah, in some ways, brand awareness is kind of an ongoing process, right? You're not going to one day just stop focusing on getting your brand name in front of as many people as possible.
Definitely. And that actually kind of leads to something that I talked about on the last webinar, which is if anybody's ever seen a Cheerios television commercial, everybody knows what Cheerios are, but if they can pay to put their ad in front of you, they're going to do it because they just want to hammer down their brand name and keep that awareness at the level that they have.
Yeah.
So we have another example here too of a probably even more well-known brand, the North Face, also advertising very similar products as Patagonia. But you can see on this search result page that we actually have 4 available spots that are being bid on. So the North Face is actually choosing to bid on all 4 of these sponsored product ads. And even though they're showing up organically, this is really important for them to kind of grab this real estate because that's 4 opportunities that they could miss out on if they're not bidding on it.
So Betsy, I have heard this before, I'm sure you have as well, but sellers asking about bidding on their own brand name and then also bidding on keywords that they're already placing for organically. What are your recommendations in those cases?
Definitely bid on it, because if you don't, someone else will, and then that'll bump you to farther down on the search result page. Like if the North Face wasn't bidding on these 4 spaces here, we could have Patagonia showing up there, and that would break the level of trust that I have with even a large brand like the North Face to have them not show up as top of mind here.
Yeah, especially, and we'll go more into this later, I know, but there's an additional area of real estate that someone else has already taken away from North Face, and we'll dive more into that a little bit later.
Good catch there, Gary. So now that we've reached kind of the bottom of the funnel and we've opened up to gain as much brand awareness as we can, it's really important to continue to use sponsored products and to really dive into this data that we're going to go into in more detail to really streamline your customer experience, because this is how you're going to keep your customers, is making sure that they have a really straightforward way of finding you. Where if you searched the North Face and you found Patagonia, you wouldn't have had a really good experience because you weren't finding the products that you wanted to. But if we can keep this consistent and we can keep putting the products in front of more people, we're going to get repeat customers and build more loyalty to your brand. So this is where now we can start to focus on growing the brand really with more orders coming in and increasing that conversion rate.
Awesome. So just as Betsy talked about, you want to streamline that customer experience. And so what we're going to focus on now is understanding your top performers to make sure that you're enhancing that experience and you're also making it consistent. So we talk a lot about sponsored product data, but what exactly are we talking about? There's 2 different things here. We have search terms and we have keywords. So search terms are going to be the string of text that a customer enters into the Amazon search bar. And then keywords are word combinations and phrases that you add and you're bidding on within those manual campaigns. So these are things that you've decided to add into your campaigns, which you're saying are relevant, to your product and you think that people might be searching for. So in this example, in the blue box, you can see the keyword raincoat can match back to several different types of search terms. Someone could type in Patagonia coat for rain, purple raincoat, raincoat for women, and there's all different ways that customers are typing in to find and be served your ad. And so this is going to be really valuable data to you. And this is what we're talking about when we say that sponsored products, this is the only place where you're going to know exactly what customers are typing in when they're looking at your products. You want to take full advantage of this information. So how do you do that? Where can you actually find this data? So you find this in the search term reports. So your search term reports are located under your reports in Seller Central, under advertising reports, and the report type is going to be search term. And so what you can see here in this example is, you have that blue box surrounding the search term women's waterproof raincoat. And there's a little star in the box next to it under keyword because this is a search term, not a keyword. And it lives in your automatic campaign, which means that Amazon is serving an advertisement for this search term for your products based on their own algorithm. In comparison, you can see this green box, which is around a customer search term, North Face men's raincoat, but this matches back to the keyword North Face raincoat. So what we've done here is we added North Face raincoat as a keyword ourselves, and then the customer actually typed in North Face men's raincoat, and we're served our ad. So your search term reports are going to provide you with a lot of data. As you can see, as you head over to the right-hand columns, there's information about the ACoS, the average cost per click for this word. You can see how many orders it's gotten you, how many sales. And so this is going to be the place that you're really going to want to dive into and make sure that you're figuring out, where are the places where I'm spending my advertising dollars, and am I spending them in the right places?
If you guys have any more detailed questions about keywords and search terms and the differences in how they operate, I encourage you to write in with your questions. Like I said, our team is on hand to address those questions as well.
Yeah, because understanding the difference between the two can be a little bit complicated. So for sure, ask us anything that you need. So as I've mentioned, sponsored products are going to be the only way for you to get insight into exactly what your customers are searching for. This is really, if you take something away from this section, this is what you're going to want to be doing. So if you're not currently running sponsored products or you're not running that many, a true benefit of it, a lot of people look at it, advertising as an investment, but running sponsored products is an investment in, knowing what your customers are looking for. And what you want to do with that data is you want to incorporate your top converting keywords into your listing pages. So that's in your titles, your summaries, in the back end to create that consistent customer experience. So what do I mean by that? Strengthen your product detail pages. If you have a lot of products, I know it sounds overwhelming and like it's going to be a lot of work, and it will be, but it will pay off. With your product titles, you only have 50 to 80 characters. So you want to make sure that whatever you're putting as that title is super relevant to your product. So you want to think about those relevant attributes. You don't want to use any sort of special characters or conjunction. You want to make sure you're following all of Amazon's rules, but that you're providing your customers with a clear and concise description of what your product is. Going into that, when someone actually clicks into your product detail page and they're looking at your imagery, which is super important, they're also going to be reading through your bullet points and descriptions. So this is an opportunity for you to be brief yet descriptive. And what we recommend is using the search terms and your top performing keywords to help you figure out what are those relevant features. What are the terminology that people are using to find your products, and when they're reading through your product detail pages, are they getting that consistent message? Because if what a customer is searching for doesn't match what it says on your product detail page, that's not going to be a streamlined or a pleasant customer experience, and it's not going to boost your conversions and really lead you to those sales that you want.
Yeah, and I think earlier in the poll, a lot of you indicated that you're in the home goods category. So some of the ways to use your bullet points could be, what materials these products are made of. It could be the country of origin, country of manufacture. So things that are relevant to someone buying, say, furniture or home accessories. That's what you want to focus on with these bullet points.
Absolutely. And so here's a pretty good example, sticking with the North Face, as we saw in my search term, we had seen that North Face men's raincoat had been something that had showed up. So as you can see right here in the title on their product listing page is North Face men's jacket. So they're really, they included their brand name, and they included a really relevant feature being gender in this product title. If you look down at some of the boxes down closer into the bottom, you can see that they've not only included, it doesn't just say rain jacket, it includes weatherproof and it includes waterproof. And these are going to be terms that you can find out, what are your customers searching for by using sponsored products data and add them in, just as North Face has done. And I think the key here, we can all agree, is that, it's not just about, quantity of keywords. You don't want to just have a list of all of those keywords that, relate to different types of jackets. You want to make sure that your customer experience is streamlined in the sense that this includes the features and terminology that is most relevant to their buying experience.
Yeah, I think relevancy is really the key takeaway here. Sarah, have you seen any, bad side effects of adding keywords that maybe are not relevant based on, history of conversion, or just to have more keywords in there? Are there any bad side effects to that?
Yeah, absolutely. So I get a lot of questions about, just kind of throwing a whole bunch of keywords, especially in the back end. But when you do that, what you're doing is, if you're not choosing super relevant keywords, either for your titles and bullet points or things, you're just trying to, show up as much as possible, you're not going to be providing customers with data or features that are relevant to them. And so there's a lot of harm, because Amazon, especially when you're running automatic campaigns, Amazon's in charge of how they serve those ads. And so if this said, great for heavyweight jacket, this is a lightweight rain jacket. So just because other people, some customers are searching for heavier jacket or a winter jacket, that's not what this product is. So your customer is not going to have a happy experience if they order this jacket, and they only came to your product because you had included just a whole bunch of irrelevant terminology.
Yeah, so just because you have 20 keywords in a campaign doesn't mean that campaign is going to perform better than one that has 5 data-driven keywords.
Exactly.
There, right? Because you could just end up spreading yourself too thin and underspending on keywords that could have performed better for you, because all of your budget is going towards this really competitive keyword that's not giving you any results.
Mm-hmm.
Which actually is a good opportunity to address William's question about, how much do you think Amazon has bumped CPC compared to a year ago? Seems it costs more for less return with higher ACoS. It's an interesting point, William. So CPC, for those of you unaware, is cost per click, has gone up, I think, over the years with more adoption of sponsored products advertising. And since the way that it works is pay per click, the more people that choose to advertise to target these sellers, the higher the bids are going to go. So it's even more important for you to be selective about what keywords you add in and what search terms you're targeting, because it's very easy to overspend on irrelevant search terms, especially for competitive categories.
Yeah, and we highly recommend, we call it getting more targeted with keywords. But for those of you who are familiar with adding different types of keywords in, there are 3 different types. There's broad, phrase, and exact. And those are going to, I recommend, searching our help center to learn a little bit more about those and how you can save money by, essentially bidding on keywords of different strength levels.
Perfect.
So now we just want to know, how often do you download your search term reports and add in new keywords?
Perfect. I'm going to launch this poll right now. And it really should say poll number 3. Sorry, guys. All right, so you see some answers coming in about how often you're reviewing, reporting. Sarah, Betsy, both of you manage campaigns, sponsor products campaigns for sellers here, some of our fully managed clients. What does your workflow look like? What are you doing?
Yeah, so in the past, we've done the manual downloading of search term reports, as you know all too well, Gari. But part of what Teikametrics does is that we're pulling search term reports once a week automatically, and then we're providing recommendations for sellers to come in and take. And so part of what our workflow looks like as account managers here is that we are also looking at that data once a week and taking action on it. So we're looking at, where are search terms in automatic campaigns that we might want to capitalize on in our manual campaigns and start bidding on individually. Where are some places in our manual campaigns where we can make those keywords a little bit better?
Is there any advantage really to looking at your search term report, 3 times a week versus 1 time a week?
Not so much, because things change quickly, but I wouldn't say that they change that quickly within the 3 days for you to make a decision. But the landscape of sponsored products is really volatile and really competitive. So I definitely think that looking at this data at least once a week is definitely sufficient and will help benefit, what you're showing up for to help grow your business.
Perfect. So I'm going to close this poll. Looks like most of you voted, and we'll share the results. So this is really interesting to me. It looks like most people are looking at their search term report once a month, and a lot of you are not analyzing this report at all. So definitely start doing that. As Betsy was saying, once a week is sort of the ideal time frame for you to get the right balance between targeting new data and then also giving all of your terms and keywords enough time to perform before making a decision. So we look back, in our software, we look back 30 days to give recommendations. So you could do the same for yourself with your reports. And I think there was a slide earlier that showed you how to access your search term report. So it would be under reports, advertising reports, and then search term report in your Seller Central. If you have any questions about how to access that, definitely write in. The experts answering your questions will be able to direct you to the right place. Perfect. So let's close this out, guys.
Okay, awesome. So, the majority of you guys were downloading your search term report about once a month, which is great. Obviously we said that once a week might be better, but I'm glad that a lot of you guys are even familiar with downloading this report, because it's a report that is also really versatile, and you can find how people are finding your products with their search terms, but you can also use this data to take a deeper dive into your market intelligence. And the more you know about your market landscape and how it affects your products and your profitability will help you capitalize on this. So you can use this data to identify what trends are happening in your competitor landscape. So you can use this data to identify peak seasons for your products. And right now we're in springtime. We keep bringing up the example of raincoats, and the brands we showed you are aware that this is a good time for them to be advertising raincoats, because a lot of people are searching for them.
Yeah, so I think it's super interesting. High traffic seasons, a lot of people, when you're thinking about North Face or Patagonia, you might be thinking about winter wear, fleeces, winter coats for those of us in the Boston area like we are.
Which was around 60 degrees yesterday when those are supposed to be summer.
Exactly.
We'll be a little bit bitter about it.
So, but really, you can see that those brands have the expertise to know that this is a high traffic season for their raincoats in particular. And, the Amazon doesn't give you the ability to target different, groups of people like Facebook ads might be able to, if you're looking at, location. So people up here in the Northeast having a rainy spring season, Amazon doesn't have that ability, but you still are going to know, what products are selling during this high traffic season, and you want to make sure that those are the ones that you're advertising.
Right. So those bigger brands obviously have much more data to work with and have entire teams of people who are analyzing this. But with the data that you're given from sponsored products, it's enough to notice these trends. And, the North Face and Patagonia have obviously done that really extensive research that if we were to search for them months ago around Christmas time, we would see those products that you're talking about, Sarah, the bigger puffy coats, the fleeces. And then as we move forward now into back to school, we'll probably see more backpacks and things like that. So this is really important for knowing when you need to target specific products with sponsored ads. So identifying when these high traffic seasons are and how they can affect different product lines that you offer.
And what metrics would you say, Betsy, people need to be looking at when they're analyzing or trying to capitalize on their peak season?
Yeah, I would look at search volume. So more looking at impressions and clicks that are coming in, not necessarily focusing on what's the highest conversion rate for the product that you got at this time, but, looking at what the search terms are for that period of time and, what products they're being mapped to based on your campaign structure to identify what you need to focus on and allocate more investment to.
So if you're looking at one of your sellers that you manage, you're trying to show them, whether the campaign for a new product is doing well, what metrics are you going to be charting for them, potentially on our dashboard or outside of that?
Yeah, with a new product launch, definitely focusing right now on impressions and clicks and making sure that it's building that awareness of that product. And, over time, start to transition to looking at more orders and conversion rates.
Okay, so would you look at say ad spend against impressions or ad spend?
Yeah, I would look at ad spend against first impressions and then clicks to make sure that those impressions or people are actually clicking on your advertisement, and then again focusing later on if that click is actually converting to a sale, because in the beginning you're not necessarily concerned about that level of profitability, but more so putting the product in front of as many people as possible.
Perfect.
And so, another way for you to just identify what this peak season is just keep track of some year-over-year data, which Amazon doesn't necessarily make it very easy for you to do this. You'll kind of have to hold on to your search term reports as you download them, maybe create a file folder on your computer of your search term reports over the year. But, the Teikametrics dashboard actually makes this pretty easy for you, where you can go back and view all of the historical data that you've had since you've signed up with us, and even compare the different metrics that Gary and I were talking about.
Yeah.
Looking at ad spend over impressions.
And with historical data, you still have to be a little bit careful in how you use it, right?
Exactly.
You wouldn't necessarily want to use it for keyword actions, but potentially for tracking performance or being prepared for the high season?
Yeah, definitely. I would say for analyzing the trends of specific products and how they adapt to different times throughout the year, but also not necessarily matching, how much I spent last year compared to how much I spent this year, because, the market on Amazon is always changing really rapidly. And this year alone is way more competitive than it was last year. So it's not going to be an exact.
And I'm guessing it's not going to get less competitive as more people.
Definitely not. Yeah, definitely not going to be less competitive next year. But kind of just taking it as a trend line, not so much as a direct comparison to what you did last year. So another way for you to use this knowledge to your advantage is to know, when your seasonality is, when your peak season is, so you can increase spend during that high traffic season. Like right now, you'll want to double down if you sell raincoats, if you sell, products that are related to Father's Day, because we're coming up really close to that. And, you'll want to make sure that your products are top of mind, and then focus later on scaling back that spend and reducing your ACoS on those products.
Yeah, and some of your spend is naturally going to go down because it's based on search volume, right? So if your season is passed, you should see a natural drop in ad spend.
Exactly.
Yeah, I actually have a seller who, sells apparel, and we recently launched a couple, you talk about those holiday specific campaigns and scaling back other apparel items. We took a lot of the budget from some of the campaigns that we had been running around Easter time towards, Easter dresses and things along those lines, and we transferred that into what we've called our July 4th campaign. And we're really advertising, the one-piece bathing suits and the shorts or the graphic tees that have American flags on them. And so we've actually created, specific campaigns to make sure that we're increasing the spend and allocating a lot of that spend, because this is the high traffic season for those specific items. So even though we would see that traffic increase naturally just based on the market trends, using sponsored products to increase that, that's what this is all about, right? We're thinking about owning marketplace, real estate. We're thinking about, understanding your place in the market, beating out competitors. If you're selling items like that and it's your high traffic season, make sure that you're doing things like that as well.
Awesome. Yeah, that's a really great strategy to use, Sarah. I can kind of use that in some other sellers that I manage. So when you scale back your spend, a lot of this is going to happen naturally with just less click volume. You can start to allocate even some of this spend toward going after your competitors, because that's another part of owning more of the market, is trying to beat out exactly who you're competing with. Yeah. So Sarah's going to walk you through how to find exactly who you're competing against.
Right. So how do you know who your competition is? A word we throw around here a lot is, understanding market intelligence and knowing who your competition is. So you probably have a pretty good idea, of some of the different brands that your brand might be competing against on Amazon, but there's a really sure way and a couple steps that you can take to make sure that you have a clear idea, because it's not always exactly who you think it might be. So you want to first download those search term reports. Again, like Ari mentioned, and like it says on one of the previous slides, that's under your advertising reports, and the type is search term report. Do that, change the dates around, look at the last 30 or maybe 60 days worth of data, and try to do that every week. Taking that information from Seller Central, that's going to give you those top contributing keywords, and then it's going to allow you to make searches of your own. So what you're going to want to do is, here's my example of that search term report once again. And so you can see in the green box, I have the keyword Patagonia in my manual men's raincoats campaign. But what I want to do is I want to take that search term Patagonia raincoat. I just want to search for that directly on Amazon in that top search term bar. And I want to see who else shows up for it. So this is in Amazon has been cracking down. If you do that and go click on all your competitors' ads and try to get their cost per click to go up and have them have them spend a whole bunch of money, Amazon will catch you doing that. So that's not what I'm recommending at all. But what I'm saying is, you want to check out those first couple listing pages, see what lists organically, see what other ads are out there. And really make sure that you're examining, go into their listing pages. You can take a look at both the positive and the negative reviews of certain products that are similar or different to yours. That's gonna be a really important way to understand exactly who you're competing against by simply just searching for what your customers are searching for. Put yourself in the shoes of your customer when they're trying to buy, and that's exactly what they're experiencing. The second and really awesome thing that the search term report provides you is in this blue box. So what this is the ASIN. So it's not actually a customer search term or a keyword, but it's in that customer search term column, because what this means is that a customer was on that ASIN page and ended up clicking on your sponsored product ad. So a lot of times if you're running automatic campaigns, you'll have sponsored product ads down at the bottom of a page. And so someone was on your competitor's page and they clicked on your ad. So typing this, going to this ASIN page is going to be really, really valuable for you to do as you're doing your competitor and market intelligence research, because it's going to show you, exactly maybe why, what the different features are, what drew someone to your product instead of, this competitors. Another thing that's good to know is, I mean, you can look at this and you can look over in the columns and see that, you know, sales, I've gotten one order and only one sale from this. So maybe I've actually been spending a lot of, you know, the spend on this one's relatively low at only 96 cents. So this isn't something, you know, that I wouldn't want to look into, but there are also going to be ASINs where maybe you've spent, you know, up to 5, 20, 10, whatever your advertising budget is, you can spend money on these specific keywords and on these specific ASINs, but they're not actually going to be adding any value to your listing page.
You made a really good point, Sarah, about using the search term report to see how sellers are looking for you. And one of the keys to that is, and getting into the mind of your seller, that's important, or sorry, the mind of your shopper. And that's important because shoppers only will search for products in a limited number of ways, right? I know if I'm going out to buy a raincoat, I want to see as many options as possible, pretty much what I'm willing to spend. So I'm not going to get very creative with my searches on Google. It's not going to be, you know, a sentence long. It's not going to be 7 different descriptors. It's going to be a very basic search. So knowing that there's a limited number of ways that people search for products, you need to keep that in mind when you're looking for keywords to add in. There's only going to be a limited number of keywords. Your goal really is to find as many of these as possible and then just spend correctly on the right ones.
Absolutely. And this is a really important point if you sell in different marketplaces. And so we've had some sellers and ask us, you know, should I just take all of my search terms or all of my keyword data from my US storefront and apply it to my UK and my EU storefronts?
Mm-hmm.
And the answer to that is not necessarily. You know, the way that someone searches for something over in London is going to be very different than how your New York City customers are searching.
Yeah, and then that's not even barring, you know, the language barrier. If I'm in Germany, I'm going to be searching for your product in German. So adding that English keyword is not necessarily going to give you the same result.
Exactly. So making sure that if you do have different storefronts, you don't just transfer all the data or treat it all the same. Really download those search term reports for each of your storefronts and take a good solid look at the data that's available to you so you can capitalize on it. Excellent.
Okay, awesome. So you guys are familiar with this example because we went over it a little bit before, but I just want to go into detail of that awesome point that Gary pointed out, that, you know, the North Face isn't necessarily top of mind when I searched their brand name on Amazon here, because we had that huge headline search ad show up for Osprey. You know, headline search ads are another form of advertising on Amazon, and they can give you this nice big hero spot for any search result page. So this is a really interesting strategy that Osprey has actually used here, is to bid specifically on their competitor's brand name as a search term. And they've successfully won that hero spot with their headline ad, and it's giving them more ways to put their product in front of more people and win more marketplace real estate by being able to compete for the North Face. Because they wouldn't necessarily show up organically, because the North Face is such a wildly popular brand with so many different products that they wouldn't show up organically at all for this, but they have the ability to show up with the competing for it.
Yeah, and I'm sure, you know, the North Face is not a cheap click for Osprey to buy, but it's something that they're willing to spend on and invest in just to get that placement and get that exposure.
Yeah, definitely. So have you guys ever, you know, had really good success like this with making competitor campaigns in SP?
You know, so I know that there are some CSMs here who have designed a couple of specific targeting campaigns for competitors. I know Amazon, if you've ever worked with them or, you know, read any of their resources, they'll call those conquesting campaigns. And so what they do is they'll throw a big, you know, pile or list of your competitors in there. So, you know, if I were North Face, I would include Patagonia, I'd throw Osprey in there, you know, you could put Columbia, all these different types, you know, of the brand names that you think you're competing against. But that can be really, really costly sometimes too. So, you know, at the end of the day, we're talking about running sponsored products to gain that exposure and win that marketplace. But at the end of the day, all of these things still cost money. So if you're competing, paying for clicks for your own brand name, relatively cost effective. If someone types your brand name in, they know what they're looking for. So those clicks should be relatively inexpensive. But if you're competing, every single time on every single one of your competitors, if your products are always showing up, if someone wants to buy a North Face backpack, yes, they might check out your ads if you're Osprey, but there is the sense that people know what they're looking for, and there's a decent amount of brand loyalty. So you want to make sure that you're not going way out of budget on those, and you're really controlled in that sort of spend.
Yeah. CS makes a really good point here. He said, or she, not sure, that bidding for your own brand name is sort of a cheaper, more cost-effective endeavor versus bidding on competitors' brand names. The caveat being, if they're not bidding on their own brand names, they choose to sit it out, then that makes it a better click for you and a more efficient conversion, which is a great point. So I guess the moral of the story is definitely bid on your own brand, because it's going to be a relatively inexpensive way for you to hold on to that real estate. And then be sort of careful about how you're targeting competitors, because you don't want to overspend in your pursuit of getting more real estate and awareness. So based on what your budgets are, that's going to kind of restrict how many of your competitors you can go after.
Absolutely. And I think something else that's really interesting, about this page and the benefit of knowing your competitors is, let's say you typed in the North Face and you are North Face, you can see that Osprey is really pushing their backpacks. But you can also see here that the sponsored product ad for the North Face backpack, they're actually running a coupon on it. So for a lot of you, as you start to think about Prime Day, when you're running coupons or discounts, using sponsored products in tow, in combination with those coupons and discounts is going to be beneficial for your business. And so when we think, bringing it all together, when Betsy was talking about knowing your competitors and thinking about your peak season and different holiday campaigns, Prime Day is something where what's more enticing here, and seeing a discount from a sponsored product is going to be something that can also be beneficial and lead to more conversions. So all in all, running sponsored products is going to allow your brand to grow on Amazon. And how's it going to do that? It's going to build your brand momentum. So we talked a lot today about exposure. Betsy talked about the top of the funnel and owning that marketplace real estate. Impressions, getting your products in front of as many eyes as possible, especially if it's a new product launch, things along those lines. And when you increase that exposure, what you're going to be able to do is that's going to lead into an increase in sales. But those sales and conversions are going to come easier if your customer experience is streamlined. So if the terminology that your customers are using to search for your product matches the title of your product and coincides with the descriptions and those bullet points of your products, that's going to be a really nice customer experience, and that's going to make that process to getting that click and that sale even easier. And then in turn, that's going to help you boost your rank, because at the end of the day, we do want to rank organically. We're talking about using pay-per-click ads, but we're also thinking about boosting all of our sales rank and making sure that our brand is growing, both organically and through sponsored products. So one way to really know and understand your place and your rank is by knowing your competition. So as we just talked about, thinking about using your data, search your competitors, do some research. I know it feels like a lot. If you have a lot of products, our recommendation is focus on those that are in their peak season right now, or focus on your top selling items and double down on the things that matter most to you, because as you build that rank, you'll just continue in this circle and you're going to build that momentum, and this flywheel effect is just going to keep growing for you. So here are the biggest takeaways from our webinar today. One, sponsored products has an effect on your entire business by building momentum. What is that called? The flywheel effect.
So using sponsored products to pay more for visibility on the search result page is also a really important takeaway because it helps build that brand awareness and exposure that we want.
Exactly. And improving your customers' experience by streamlining the ways that they're finding your products is going to be really, really important as you continue to make sure that your customers are buying and purchasing your items.
And then using that search term report again to understand your market landscape and help you allocate your spend efficiently. Identifying your consumers, identifying your peak seasons, definitely really important to growing your brand.
Yeah. And if I had to add on one more, just off the top of my head, it would be download those search term reports, you guys. That data is so valuable to you. So expert tip from today, take that information and use it because it's really, really, really valuable.
Yeah, more frequently than once a month.
Perfect. So thank you for staying with us today. We'd like to invite you to join a free trial of our SP Optimizer software. As Sarah and Betsy were discussing today, it's really important to have data at your fingertips. So if you are in that bucket, which a lot of you today were people who've never looked at a search term report, then you could keep it that way and sign up for the free trial where we'll do the work for you and scour those search term reports and give you the recommendations. So if that's an intimidating concept, don't worry about it. We got you covered. So we encourage you to sign up for the free trial. While you go do that, we're going to go ahead and keep answering some questions here. So I'm going to leave, I've dropped a link in the chat box. I encourage you to click on it and go sign up for the free trial. Have us on in the background as we go through a couple more questions here. So some of the questions I see coming in are about changing bids. What are your guys' recommendations on bidding strategies for keywords? I see a couple of people asking about, changing the frequency of bids or how to change them. You guys have any recommendations there?
Yeah, so the first thing you want to think about, what's really important is your default bid. So Amazon's going to give you a suggested range. We make sure, we recommend that you consider being somewhere around the middle of that, depending on how aggressive you want to be. So think about default bids. That's going to be a really important place to start. And that's going to be for all of those ad groups, both in auto and manual campaigns. But when it comes to bidding more specifically on keywords within your manual campaigns, we actually have an algorithm that's going to be taking into account a whole bunch of data for you and makes those changes daily. But what it takes into account is your conversions, your clicks, how much potential revenue you're going to make off of that product, as well as the number of impressions. So it takes into account a lot of those different factors, which are seasonality, how many people are actually clicking on your items, how saturated the marketplace is being, how well that keyword is converting for you, because you want to think about your top performing keywords might not be exactly what you think. We hear a lot from sellers about, this is my main keyword. I want to bid really high on it, but if you spend $3 per click on that and it doesn't convert for you as well as something that's maybe something that you wouldn't think is as relevant, listen to the data. That's the best thing that I can tell you when it comes to bids. Don't just say, oh, this is how I would search rain jacket for women, but someone else might search women's rain jacket, and there's or female rain jacket, which is something you might not think of off the top of your head, but if that's something that customers are using to find your products, you might want to increase the bid on that. There's going to be a lot of different factors, but we do recommend, we change bids every single day, although we do that automatically, but we do it mathematically. So if there's one thing I can say.
People much smarter than us who designed the software, the bidding algorithm, and it does, it makes intelligent choices for you versus, the more simple formulas you might be able to use manually. So shout out to Dr. Michael Canamella, our data scientist, for creating that wonderful algorithm. The other question we see coming in is would you recommend search terms from Amazon be used in Bing and Google?
it's really good data that you have that, you can see what's actually working for you. But, the landscape of Amazon sponsored products is wildly different than it is from Bing and Google. So definitely using the resources that you have for other tools to find what works specifically for those channels.
Yeah, I'd imagine that your cost per click is going to be still more affordable on Amazon than it will be on Google.
Yeah.
Even though I know we discussed earlier that CPC has probably gone up year over year for most searches, it's still going to be a more inexpensive click for you than Google AdWords, which is farther ahead as far as CPC goes. So it is good data to use, and if you're already running campaigns off of Amazon, then there's no reason you shouldn't be leveraging that data that you have. And then just to clarify, we've referenced real estate a lot today. Just to clarify, what we mean is placement on the page. So in some cases, it's the top of the page, like your HSA ads, the Sparkle placement. And then in some other cases, it's going to be your paid placement at the top of search results, and then organic placements a little bit farther below those paid searches. Great. Well, thanks, guys. Thanks, everyone, for joining us. If you still have questions, you could definitely keep, reach out to us, get in touch. That link is in the chat box. We'll share it with you with the webinar recording as well to sign up for a free trial, so you can get an idea for our product and see how that could automate some of these processes for you and demystify sponsored products a little bit. So thank you so much for joining us. We'd like to let you know about a couple more, or maybe one more webinar we have coming up, right?
Yeah, so on June 27th at 1 p.m., we're going to be offering the next webinar called 7 Simple Strategies to Building Profitable Sponsored Products Campaigns. So we talked about the 2 different types of campaigns a little bit today, both automatic and manual, and kind of the search terms and keywords within them. But make sure that you sign up, and because building those campaigns is actually relatively complicated, and there's a lot of great tips that our team's going to be able to offer you during that.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll be on that one as well. So I look forward to meeting some of you again, talking to you there as we focus more on campaign structure and strategy. So once again, thanks everyone for joining us. We look forward to hearing from you through the free trial, or just reach out to us with any other questions you may have. Look for a recording of this webinar to come out shortly. And then while I end this webinar, if you guys can hang tight for 10 seconds, there's going to be a quick survey that pops up. It's just a 1-question survey that gives us a better idea for what content you need and what kind of help you need, so we can give you the right information. Thanks, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us.